Hey everybody, so just a little bit of an adjustment. The video you're about to watch, I originally filmed it as just a solo play of Orchidelirium. But as I was going through it and I was explaining how to play the game rules as written, as a group, it's for 2 to 6 players. I was then going through and talking about the changes that I make for solo play. And I realized that there were certain areas, certain domains that whenever I'm converting a non-solo game into solo play, I sort of tweak or at least evaluate these areas which I realized I was able to like name. And so the video is kind of an audible is called in the middle of it. And so the first part of the video that you're going to watch first is the part I did first, which is like, here's how you play the game. Here's why I love orchids, which I maybe carried on too long with. But then the second part is going to be, rather than just like, hey, here's how I made this game solo, I'm going to expand it out more to say, this is the system that I use to soloify a game, and here's how I do that process with Orchidelirium as an example. And so you can skip to that part just to see the sort of systematized way. But I think to really understand it, it's important to watch the first part of the video to see what this game looks like before we apply solo changes to it. But it's up to you. You're an adult now, and I trust you, and you got to move out of the house. Okay, you're 43. It's time to leave the. If you know anything about me, folks, it's that I have my finger to the pulse of the YouTube algorithm. I know what it wants. I know what it needs. And that's why today we're going to be taking a look at Orchidelirium, Volume 1 Expedition Rules, a role-playing game regarding orchid hunting during the reign of Queen Victoria. This game is about 3 to 4 years old. I've never seen a YouTube video made on it. And it's also not a solo game. So, now that all 30 of us are here, let me tell you why I chose this. First of all, I love orchids. And the reason I love orchids is because I am probably the only person in the world who's about to say this, but my favorite movie, not even a close second, is Adaptation. And of all the Charlie Kaufman movies, this is probably one either you haven't caught or you just didn't enjoy it. That's been the consensus on average. I tend to like movies that other people find forgettable. I don't like movies that people hate. I guess I don't try to, at least. I'm not contrarian. It's just sometimes a movie hooks me in a certain way and I just become obsessed with it. And Adaptation is one such movie I've talked about on this channel several times. This is the script for it. I'm not even going to try to explain it, other than to say the opening scene is Nicolas Cage as Charlie Kaufman doing a monologue in his head while he is on the set of Being John Malkovich, watching a behind-the-scenes clip of John Malkovich playing John Malkovich, playing John Malkovich, playing John Malkovich in Being John Malkovich. In the movie, the orchid is sort of like a turbo MacGuffin. It is the inciting stuff that causes pursuit, but it's more than that. It's sort of this stand-in, this analog for the essence of whatever it is that makes people passionate to the level of like reckless abandon. So for me, I latched onto this movie because I saw it at a time. It came out in like 2004 or 5. Came at a time where I was realizing I wasn't special, all right? So, like a lot of people in millennial generation, when I graduated college, I was like, I'm very special. I'm very talented. So why do I have like a cubicle job? And why am I making no money and I can't even afford my rent? Like, there must be some mistake because didn't you get the memo? I'm very talented and special, and trying for honestly a decade to like square that circle. Um, and this movie had so many moments about just like that, whatever knot that is, it just untied that knot. It gave so much voice to it. And it's a silly movie, and it's a violent movie, and it's a beautiful drama, and it's horribly written, and it's the most amazingly written movie. I just can't really capture it. But um in this movie, there is this focus on orchids because it is supposed to be based on The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean, which is an actual book based on an actual New Yorker article. In the movie, Susan Orlean is played by Meryl Streep. And the movie is supposed to be an adaptation of The Orchid Thief, but it's really an adaptation of the adaptate. Forget it. The point is that um, Meryl Streep as Susan Orlean is in the process of writing this article where she goes to meet a man who, and this is IRL, uh, was arrested for poaching orchids on like protected lands. And to this day, orchids are still covered by CITES, I think it's called CITES, which is like there's still you still need a permit for like cross-border trade of orchids just because historically it it caused like international catastrophes. I'll talk a little bit about what happened with Orchidelirium, and I'm saying this because I'm making the case for why this is such a great choice for a game. Um, but yeah, the orchids are kind of they represent this desire we have to be passionate about something. I remember watching jazz, trying very hard to be somebody who goes to see live jazz. Weirdly, I after trying and failing for many years, I just realized I wasn't listening to the right kind of jazz, and I loved going to see live jazz now. It's a little more experimental, but at the time, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I just thought I would like sit there and listen to jazz and that would magically make me cultured or something. But I have this image in my mind of a person playing their trumpet, and it was like nothing else existed. It was like that trumpet, those notes was the only thing he wasn't even thinking about it. It was just the all everything. It was the all everything. And I was so moved by this. I wasn't jealous or envious. I mean, I definitely wanted that, but for me, it was this repetitive rage of the fact that some people, when they're 6, they're like, I want to be an ophthalmologist. And then they just do all the things and become an ophthalmologist. And it's like, why didn't I draw that straw? Right. Um, and it is this desire to just love some like be so into something that nothing else compares, like nothing else compares to the priority of that. And what is interesting about this on sort of a meta level is that in 1860s Victorian London, this type of desire to desire was manufactured around orchids in a period that is now known as Orchid Delirium or Orchid Mania. At the time, orchids were not available in London. No plant life can grow there. Actually, there's not grass or anything in the UK. They have, I think, dandelions. That's it. But there is at that time orchids were nowhere near that, and so to get an orchid was almost impossible. You'd have to like ship it, and it would had a 0.03% chance of surviving that. But then they created these Wardian cases, which I've actually never seen one, but I always picture in my mind like the glass bell from Beauty and the Beast. Whatever it was, apparently they were very cumbersome, but they raised the survival rate from 0.3 to 30%, right? And these orchids became this high society status symbol because they had all of the requirements of like precious metals. They were rare, there was scarcity. They were hard to cultivate, hard to keep alive. They had a luster. I mean, not like a metallic luster, but there's something about them that was like visually appealing in and of itself. And so these companies uh, would commission these expeditions to go and find orchids in um, like Indian subcontinent, in South America, all over the world for these private collectors, botanical gardens, and especially these commercial nurseries. And so like by mid to late 1800s, it's this full on luxury market frenzy in Britain, somewhat New York, and it just became this social proof. It was rare, it was exotic, it was difficult, and so it was perfect for like a conspicuous display in if you're a person who has a conservatory in your home, at a high society event. um it was saying like, look at how novel and scarce this is. And so nurseries started to compete to be the first one to find these new species. And there, even with the Wardian cases, a bunch of them would still die. And so when they would say, well, how many do you want, these expeditions, these companies would say, oh, fill up your boat, as many as you can possibly get. And sometimes they would commission like 3 expeditions and for the same orchids and not even tell them. And they would be like competing with each other and like killing each other. I mean, in the movie, she talks about Augustus Margery. And it's like he survived pleurisy, pneumonia, tuberculosis, just to be like murdered. And I was like, oh my gosh, that can't be real. It was much worse. He was murdered. It caused like an international incident between China and the United Kingdom that required like a treaty. There was a statue for him. Anyways, um, the point is it became this cutthroat business because it was just so profitable. Now, today, because we have superior ability to cultivate them, to maintain them, they're not as relatively expensive as they were. But I should say they're not cheap. Like I was looking up Dendrophylax lindanae, which is the ghost orchid, the sort of focus, the Everest. Is Everest the right? It's the sort of Grail would be for the movie. And it's just a stunning flower. Like the architecture of an orchid is so unbelievably elegant. I don't know what else to say, but then like look at the price of this still to this day. Still $200. Now this is like a very good one from a very reputable nursery. I've gotten these for $40. I've killed them I've never been able to keep one alive more than a week. And I had to stop. But even like looking at this right now, I'm like, I should give it another try. I've heard about a technique where you get an ice cube and you melt it with a hair dryer. Never mind. So it was positively nutty. And it as again as like the technology and horticultural techniques improve, they were able to um cultivate them, but what's the word where they could propagate? They could propagate them. But for a time, it was this remarkable thing that we probably wouldn't see as remarkable because it's done every day now, like all day, is this sort of spin cycle of amplified object fetishism where it's like, don't you want this thing? Look at who wants this thing. This person has this thing and this person wants this thing. So if they have it and they want it, don't you want it? And but at that point in history, there was, I mean, mass media to an extent, telegrams, newspaper, but there was an absolute frenzy for this stuff. And there were people just making business empires. Now, the fallout of this is not only that it was like deadly, uh, these people who would compete would kill each other for these like orchid roots, but they so many people died on these expeditions just from like the danger of transit. And as the scarcity increased, there was more risks of like how deep you would go, and people from London in 1860 were not really that well equipped to push into the inner jungles of India. They died a lot of dehydration and diarrhea, and also to this day there was this they stripped these places ecologically bare, and there were they established patterns of plant poaching that, as I was looking into this, I don't fully understand this, but it looks like these routes are still in existence, these sort of black market plant poaching routes. And so, anyways, I think that the orchid is a fantastic uh, subject for a game because it is so it perfectly represents um, what every other game takes for granted, which is like I don't want to pick on 4 Against Dark. Well, yeah, I do. They used AI in their latest one. So 4 AD, uh, you go into this dungeon and you gotta fight all these monsters, but it's like, why? Well, because I have to go into the dungeon. Why? Well, I want treasure, but don't you just use that to buy other weapons and stuff? Well, yeah, but it's an adventure. It's like, why? Right? And I think games should be more specific about what is the object of desire. People are in a sense getting more sophisticated, but also hungry for just sometimes having all the parts of the story there. You know, I mean, it's just like I feel that there's so much that's left to abstraction now. People really don't know what the operate like what is kickstarting the engine of this adventure. And not only do I think it's good in general to be explicit about that, I also think that when we do think about the object of this whole thing, we can start to find some very creative avenues and subjects of play, because we can see what motivates people, what motivates them to the point that they would kill for it, what motivates them to break laws, what are things that will put people in such dire circumstances that heroism could emerge. And suddenly you have a game that rather than having to operate on the petrol of just like, oh, it's an adventure and people got to go on adventures because he's got an axe and doesn't wear a shirt, so of course he's going on an adventure. So I think that even if, like I said, even if we'll go through this game, we'll see how it works, but even if we can't figure it out right now perfectly for solo play, there's something about this dude that he just has such different ways of looking at certain things in games. I don't quite know how to explain it, but Luke Earl also did this advanced double D6, which is such it's it's like what so many simple game engines want to be. It's totally stripped down into just everything you need and nothing else. Um, is it the best system? No. Is it perfect? Far from it. But it just is so comprehensive and hits so many of the marks. And I think that probably a lot of what we might be missing here in this 2 to 6 player game of Orchidelirium, I just think it will lend itself well to solo play. And more than that, I'm s- I really want to find the right concoction of systems that I can employ in solo play when I just want to solo play a story that I've thought of. And it will have risk, and it will have rewards, and it will have stakes, and it will have relationships, and it will have all these things, but I don't have to commit to like combat. I mean, combat's possible, but it just feels like I have such a difficult relationship with this because I don't care as much about combat, but I also am picky about it. And if there's no combat, then I feel like it's a meal without protein. And I grew up in the Midwest, so it's like there's mashed potatoes, there's string beans, where's my meatloaf? And I think that this can help to open a few doors of perception here about what does a game look like if the thing we're doing is not something we expect to get in a fight along the way, but it is dangerous and we're kind of expecting anything. So, what I'm saying right now, I think will come into focus a little bit more as we go over this. So, we'll start by just going over what the game is and how you would play it in a multiplayer setup. There's in the book, it's quite short. It did come out 3 to 4 years ago, but I just looked on the itch.io page and he's like, hey, 3 to 4 years late, but I think I'm about to release volumes 2 and 3. So I'll link this below. Please take a look at it. Just a little plug here as well. I'm sorry if you saw my last video, I plugged this as well, but thank you to everybody who downloaded Ding Dong for $2.01. This is the Pirate Borg solo pamphlet tool that I released last week, and I was so inspired by this like pamphlet. It's helping me so much to keep my thoughts concise, and it's like a sonnet, right? I'm trying to fit as much as I can. But I did create the Stars Malign, which is a solo derelict crawling game. And I have these symbols that I are uh, they're not going to mean anything to you, and sometimes they don't mean anything to me. But it's basically a D66 alphabet, and the story here is you're on a derelict ship. And I put just different exploration mechanics, and there's so many fun generators and a combat thing. It is system neutral, but essentially it's a pamphlet where you are going to be this xenoarchaeologist where you go on this like 6 million-year-old ship and try to decode these different words on the walls. And we have like an idea of what they mean, but we haven't really cracked the code yet. So like if I were to say like Rux Ma Fe, that would be like awaken vast moon. And so what does that mean? It could mean there's a big moon that's gonna, to come on the scene. Or what else could a moon mean? Like what else does moon, nighttime, sleep, Artemis, like what are all the associations? So it's a game where you're both like creating and perceiving the oracle, and it's taking place in the world. So please check that out. That one is $2.02. And I added the 2 cents because I'm going to try to use the 2 cents like for everyone that bought, every one of them that's purchased, 2 cents of that goes to a new juicer for my mom. She doesn't use it that much, but she feels like if she has the juice machine, she feels like at any time I can be healthy. So I want to get her something. It depends how many people. I think 230,000 people have to buy one for me to get a juicer. It has this player's mat, which is downloadable, but also photocopyable from the center. And in fact, there's quite a few gorgeous gorgeous tools here. But this playmat is very, very inspiring to me. It's inspiring because of the simple way that it organizes these different components of play, and in it makes me feel like there are so many games that could be propagated through a mixture of travel or overland events, weather, employer, so whoever would be giving you a quest, environs or environments, locals, and messages that you received tailored to that game. And Luke Earl, who is of Aether Corp, is very much a diagram thinker, and I really really like looking at his stuff in a variety of different ways, because this is mostly what I want to know about, what I want to talk about when I am trying to understand a game. I want to understand the loop of play. That's something that's pretty familiar to solo players, but I like these a lot. I also want to understand the relationships that each component of the game has with the other components. So I want to know, how does this stat affect this? How does like that this is advancing? What is that causing? What is that piece causing pressure to? And you can actually see it spelled out in the back of Orchidelirium, where he does this example expedition, and just based on the sort of build, the architecture of this game, it's no surprise that the actual sample adventure is divided more by like altitude and temperature than it is anything else. But just so much in so little space. Here is the division of what each of the suits of cards are going to stand for. And what I think we'll do is we'll talk through this, just maybe not this specific example, but this pretty much sums up what play is going to look like in this game. So I'll break down every piece of this. I'll give a pretty basic overview of how to play the game. It won't take very long. And then we'll talk about how we're going to modify it for solo play, because I have some ideas for that as well. But if you get this game or advanced double D6, you could see other examples of Luke's approach to gameplay. And even in the adventure, I mean, it's just like worth the price of admission right there, the inspiration cloud. But the way that he has you write up quests here, the maps are broken down into diagrams. Everything is made into um, a map, like geographically, but also maps of meaning, because everything should be able to be broken down this way. This especially is so interesting to me because it's undoubtedly based on sort of the hero's journey, but functionally, this is the simplest way that I have seen this entire arc of play broken down in well, this entire arc of like the monomyth or the metamyth broken down this way is need, go, search, find, take, return. And that, like, seeing that, I mean, it's just this offhand diagram that he has here, but I'm like, yes, this is everything. This is every single thing that we do. And here you need something, so you need the right person, character creation. This is the quest, and this is the end of the quest, or the return, or the denouement. And so I think it's really good to like even how to summon the names by using adjacent hexes. It's really good to um, read this stuff because it breaks it down so well. There is actually another thing by Aether Corp that well, two things honestly that I really encourage you to take a look at if you, like me, are helped by understanding how games are mapped out. So his most recent thing here is I think it's called What's Happening, but it's WUATS. And I don't want to show the whole thing because it's only 6 pages, but it is only 6 pages because it essentially is a sixfold the size of a business card. And uh, the what is a wonderfully unexpected and terribly small. So WU, I guess, ampersand T. Um, and you set up your character like this, and then you walk with a GM and you decide on a difficulty. And you're like, okay, this is really easy. So it's 4. And you're very good at it. And so on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, you say 2, and the GM says 2. Okay, you had the same number. Something wonderful happens. If you say 2 and the GM says 3, something unexpected happened because the numbers are right next to each other. And if it's anything else, something terrible happens. Okay. So you always succeed, but just based on this sort of blurting it out. So the idea is you could pull this out of your wallet. You and the GM are walking around, right? Um, and if you do a thing you're bad at, to change your GM's number by 1 later. So this again, though, like it's very basic, but the things that are pointed out here are so essential. They're so essential to building a game. And yes, they're not everything, but they really, really get to the heart of it. And this is yet again a relationship map uh, that it kind of sometimes when I see this stuff, it is extremely inspiring because I'm like, everyone can write stories. This is really what a story is. You have these chain of relationships. They're interlinked, but there's something stopping the desires of these relationships from being fulfilled, whether that's friendship or a business deal or whatever. And then sometimes I feel a little bit depressed because I was like, man, this is all that there is to it. But of course, that's absurd. We don't want to feel depressed about that. But a really cool other one here, available on itch, is a small collection of flowers and entanglements. And what this is actually about, this is also very short, 24 pages. It's not about actual flowers, which I think would be cool. By the way, I was trying to make a D10, but then my carpal tunnel acted up. But I do have a D9 for different orchids. I drew that. It's pretty cool, right? Um, Here's the ghost orchid. That's where it went. Ugh, I got the claw. So let me see if I can make this just a little bit bigger. All right, so this small tome briefly describes 2 methods for organizing adventures and/or adventurous situations. It includes 8 accompanying templates with which to aid you in planning and running your role-playing game. So these are hex flowers and tangle graphs. And again, I don't want to show the whole thing, but the hex flower, which was originally created by Goblin's Henchman, is essentially a way of generating, well, as he says, pretty much anything. And it is based around these what is proximal to like each letter here we assign from good to bad. And so you can just sort of like determine whether a player is going to move towards something good or bad. And in a way, it's just like randomizing it. I mean, there's in some way there's not much more to it than that. But in this slightly absurd but funny example of pretty much the same setup, but it talks about this what is it, catoblepas, which is a beast cow that is used in this example, and then you have a traveler. And essentially, it's just talking about through a series of events that either go poorly or well. The list, you kind of move in a better or worse direction, and the idea here is that this is a kind of long range way to determine the path of a story, rather than saying, okay, we're going to start here and go here, which is railroading, or my method, which I know is like what I think this is best, but it doesn't work for everybody. I understand that, which is like, don't worry about it. Just keep going, keep manufacturing, and your mind will sort of stitch the plot together. I very much believe in that. But if you're somebody who wants there to be something beyond a railroad and yet not so open-ended that it's like a boat on the ocean. This is an example of a way to do that. I'm not necessarily talking about these things specifically. Here's tangle graphs, which are if you have two things working together and you there's like lists you could fill in. So all I'm saying is this is a person who comes at gameplay from a place, very much a place of constructing or diagramming it. And even if that's not your jam, like that's not your favorite thing to do, I think it's excellent for learning, especially solo play, because it's about identifying the gaps. And we're gonna do that now. Like we're gonna take a look at Orchidelirium and see where the gaps are, and see how to patch them up. Because I think very often on Reddit you'll see these things that say, "How do is there a solo tool for this?" Or like, "How is this game for soloing?" And to me, it's fine. Like it's good to have a tool, and there are some really good tools. But if there's not a tool that's ready made, one of the reasons why I make like pamphlets and stuff like this is because whenever I want to play a game, I just it's not a solo game. I just go, okay, what is missing? And it's stuff like this, these sort of diagrams, which aren't very uh, romantic notions of RPGs, right? We want to believe that there's some sort of magic happening, but they do allow us to create the magic. We're not the little kid on Christmas morning, but we still have the delight of like being Santa. All right, so from the top, um, Orchidelirium is an expedition game about Victorian orchid hunters going into the wild, solving problems, revealing who they are, who they used to be, and trying to return with these rare blooms intact. Um, Now we're gonna convert this into solo play, or at least my attempt to make it solo play. I'm kind of doing it live. But first, I just want to talk about how to play the game as rules as written for multiple players. It does give instructions for one player, but when it says that in the book, that means like one player and the GM, so really two. Basically, play alternates between scene prompts that are called obstacles. Now, for some of you, this will not be an issue, but for those of you who are like me who get hung up on specific words, for me, an obstacle means there's some sort of challenge. There's a skill test involved or something like that. And a shift that I had to make in understanding this was that often that's what an obstacle is here. But an obstacle could also just mean a scene. There are three types of obstacles in this game: risk, reverie, and reward. And because there is only out of those three, only risk to me is associated in my head with like a challenge. Uh, I was really stuck on like it says, for generate obstacles for reverie and rewards, and I'm going, wait, I have to generate an obstacle for the reward? It's like, no, 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 talk about the obstacle that is the reward. And I'm like, but that's not that those aren't the same. Like that's you can't have a reward. I mean, I guess you could have a, but what the easier way to understand that is like a scene about. And when it says you have a scene where you have to resolve this obstacle, that could include the anchor thought that I have to reorient myself in this is like maybe you're just 10 and you get it a present and then your mom says say thanks and you're like, oh, I don't really know how to do it. Then go ahead, say thanks, right? So it could be an obstacle, but it could also just be a scene. And the obstacle is for the player is to maybe like explain how it goes down. Okay. So if that is something that catches you up, don't worry about it. Just think of it as a scene. But this is a really cool system here. Basically, the cards are put around in this order by the GM. And if I was actually playing right now, of course, I didn't shuffle this deck. Let me shuffle this. It's not a good example. This would be a miracle. This is actually a good point, though. You want to take the aces out and divide two of them and put two of them aside, because when an ace comes up, that's an orchid. You found an orchid, and so that sort of transitions you into a special set of scenes. And so what you want to do is like cut, once I shuffle the deck more, I'm going to cut the deck in half, put two of the aces here, two of the aces here, and then shuffle them separately and put them on top of each other. And as you might be able to reason out, the reason for that is so that we don't like start the game and go orchid, 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 orchid. Like we want to divide those up, because those are really what we're going after here, is the four orchids. Okay. All right, so I'm about ready to add these in here. We'll give it one more shuffle, and we'll give it a cut there, and then I'll divide this in half. And I'm just gonna kind of get them into the middle somewhere. And we'll do the same over here. Here, one of them here, and then I'll give these a shuffle. It's kind of hard to shuffle a half deck, but let me shuffle these up. All right, so two of the aces here I'm going to put on top, and then two of the aces here, and we'll draw from the deck in order. And around this is all of the different types of obstacles that are going to be introduced. We always start with the employer, and then environs, locals, messages, travel, weather. They don't have to be done in order. If you're playing in a group game, I believe it's the actual, like, whoever is the starting player would choose which one to flip. But essentially, you're going to have these cards in each of these slots here representing the different challenges. And again, these obstacles just mean like this scene has shown up in this way, like a message has been delivered. The locals have something to say about your expedition. So the core loop of the game is you flip an obstacle card. The GM would frame a scene using the card's prompt. Okay. And the card's prompt, there is like a little GM reference sheet here that is very handy. Again, it's in the core book. But we would flip this, and we have a 10 of spades. And so what is that? Employer. So this would be the one that really starts the adventure. So this would be a little bit different, because it would maybe be your employer that has written you instructions or is meeting with you. But just so that we can see what it is, it's a 10, and they're going to provide provisions. But it's a 10 of spades, okay? And this is another place that I got a little bit mixed up. And so let me make it easy for you. Essentially, you flip a card, and that's the prompt, and the players overcome it in one of three ways. The first way is that every player will get 5 cards at the beginning of the game, and they will look at each of those, and they will compare it to the list of belongings. All right. And this is a really cool sort of inverted method of character creation here, because they'll look at those belongings, and they'll backwards sort of establish who their character is based on those belongings. Okay. And so if somebody had like reams of paper and a quill and binoculars and a machete, you could be like, oh, this is a cartographer. There's somebody who's like turn of the century mapping the coast of these unexplored lands or whatever, right? If you had somebody who had a stack of books and an old vase, I guess, and they had calipers, and they had some sort of a dusting chalk, you'd say, oh, this person is like a reliquarian or whatever. They're looking for ancient things, whatever. It's, I think, fun to do it that way, but there's also like a D12 list of occupations For instance, the one that I got on a playthrough was like a machete, a revolver. In fact, we might use that one for this. Machete, revolver, med kit, matches and tinder, and I think a walking stick. Forgot what the last one was, but I was like, wow, those are actually like excellent pulls because those are all very useful. However, that's pretty broad. And then I was kind of like, sort of like Indiana Jones. So I said I could really be anything because I have this other side of me when I'm out in the field. And so I rolled on the table and it's like, yes, you may be doing that now, but your day job is you're an accountant. And that's fun, even when it doesn't match up. I mean, I think one of the best scenes in recent movies is Saving Private Ryan when Tom Hanks finally says his profession, right? And then like litigating those scenes knowing what he is like it just makes it so much more of a powerful character. So that's really cool. You can also just roll on that. And when you get an obstacle and you need to overcome it with one of your belongings, you can just say, I'm going to use my, there's a rope that needs to be a rope ladder and it is not, it looks like it's going to break. Okay. And you say, oh, I have, my character has needle and thread. That's probably not going to work for a big rope, but let's just say, and they say how they'd use it and they take this and they discard it. Okay. And it's an auto succeed. If they, don't want to give up belongings or the player doesn't have belongings that apply, then they have to test their wits or use a hired hand. At the beginning of play on the character sheet, there's also a list of hired hands in a bunch of different areas. And for every one of them, it is represented by a penny. And I think it's 6. And the reason why I'm saying I think is because I obviously did some adjustments for solo play that I'll talk about, but you can also use a hired hand if the hired hand has some sort of expertise in that area. And they have pretty good like archetypes for what you're going to be doing in this game, like a meteorologist, a porter, a collector, an interpreter, a carpenter, a botanist, etc. When you use a hired hand, um, that's it. You've used it, and that hired hand is no longer usable. On the other hand, which I guess doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's like, hey, go fix that rope, and but maybe they say, I quit. I'm not working for this jerk anymore. Anyways, a hired hand is sort of a one-use thing. When you use a belonging, you do have the opportunity to preserve that belonging by rolling a 2d6. And if you roll a 2d6 and you get a 7, then you keep it. Which is not, what is that, 10 to 15%, I think. But still a chance that you can keep it. And so maybe you get lucky and you have a little bit of thread left. And the last thing, if you don't have a hired hand or you don't want to use one, and you don't have a belonging or don't want to use one, you can test your wits. And testing your wits also means that you have to roll a 7, which is very difficult. But if you're able to embellish a memory or something about you that makes it convinces the GM that you have more experience than you've let on, you can get your expanded your success window. So you can get a plus or minus 1. So you could say, I'll take 6 and 7 or 7 and 8, which I think brings you up to about 30% success. And so testing your wits is the most dangerous thing because if you fail at testing your wits, you have to turn in both a belonging and a hired hand. And so you might be saying, well, what the hell? Like, do I have HP? How do I lose? Well, what happens is like your belongings are sort of your HP. because if you run out of them, then you're basically like on your last leg, and you could maybe use hired hands if you have any, but if you have no hired hands and you have no belongings and you have to do a roll, all you can do is test your wits. And if you fail that roll, you're out of luck, whatever that might mean. And you just start roll up a new player, and they're very straightforward about that. There's like ways you just say, okay, next scene. Oh, thank goodness you're here. I've been trapped here in this cave behind this rock pile. My name is so and so, and I'm here to join your party. So it's a game that's very much about just like keeping the story going, which I really appreciate. Okay. So you create the hunters, the orchid hunters from your belongings. You deal these 5 cards. These are your hunters' cherished belongings. You figure out who they are, pick a former profession, choose a name, and then explain how you started hunting orchids. And you get 6 pennies and split them evenly as possible among the hunters. And if you have the heck? If you have a weird combination or number, weird, odd, I guess, somebody's gonna have one more or one less than others. That's fine. And for each penny you have, you choose a hired hand and pay for the penny. So probably that's what justifies them like leaving, is you don't have anything to pay them anymore. And you can also, people can choose the same hired hand, especially if they're really helpful. Like I could say a surgeon, probably pretty helpful. A soldier, depends also like what the conditions are. An interpreter might be really good. And then we put these 6 cards out, and these again are the 6 obstacles or types of scenes. We prepare the decks with the aces, 2 in the first half, 2 in the second half, and that sets up a thing where the orchids are spaced out. Now, the GM in group play is actually going to take a look at the deck and know how far it is till an ace, and we can just take a look here. Okay, so they would say here are 4 more obstacles. They probably wouldn't show what the ace is, and they would say, okay, you have 4 more obstacles till the ace. This probably wouldn't happen on the first one, but once you understand why this is, it might make more sense. Is that as you go on in the game and you deplete your belongings, you deplete your hired help and everything, um, you do have a chance to like go back with what you have, and uh, that will be something you have to decide as a group. Like, how much of your goal have you achieved? Have you done what your employer asked? Have you gotten the amount? Have you gotten the type? Have you done the things? And it's not always going to be just orchids. I mean, those 4 orchids, these new types of orchids, are obviously the intended purpose, but the obstacle that's introduced at the beginning of the game is often going to be overarching. In a game that I played, because I pulled up, I think the employer one was a meteorological measurement. And so I said, like, my employer was J. Carmichael and Associates, and it says, now you listen, besides getting these orchids, we're contributing to the Carnegie Institute for Meteorological Studies, and so you absolutely must take at least 2 successful measurements of, the barometric pressure at these different points. And so that was these additional goals that determined overall how successful I was in meeting the requirements of my employer. And now you usually exhaust the deck, but if you want, because that will be all the orchids, but if there's instructions in the back if you want like a shorter game. And so yeah, the GM will describe the expedition sort of opening, or the employer, however they get that message to you. And and the first obstacle will be the employer obstacle, and this one again is special. It sets this overarching goal or demand or hindrance or effect that can hang over the whole expedition or until resolved. And then after that, players take turns deciding what to do next and flipping the obstacle that matches their intent. And so it's like, if you want to push forward, flip the travel one, as an example. So King is barrier to passage, okay? And so we've just started the expedition. We're out on the sea now. And it says, okay, we're supposed to go through this canal. And it's like, sorry, can't go here. This canal's been closed, right? And then there is going to be an obstacle generated around that. And so you have to figure out, are we going to negotiate? Are we going to bluff? Are we going to try to navigate an alternate route? Are we going to pay them off? And you would use your resources accordingly. Are you dealing with terrain or your immediate surroundings in a room, the setting, be environs? Are you getting, as I think reflects real life, the local people who lived in these places where the orchids were poached, probably were not very happy, probably are not happy about that. And so that could be something that occurs. Messages would be like updates from usually your employer, a telegram, or there's some sort of recording left for you that you find, whether, and then it goes back to employer. When an obstacle flips, right, the position tells us what the problem is, but the suit also tells us which thread of the story it's referring to. Okay. Now this again, this was a sticky point for me because I just couldn't figure it out. But once it clicked into place, I was like, ah, cool, cool. So each suit not only represents one orchid, like each ace is a different of these 4 orchids. But additionally, each of those orchids, now we're talking like meta plot, each of those orchids carries with it a secret and an adversary. Now, the book, it's a little confusing in the way that it talks about an adversary because it seems at first to be anything that's in opposition to you. Could be, the fault line. You're on a fault line and an earthquake keeps happening. But it is, I guess, rules as written talking about a person. Now, something that was also mysterious to me was like, is each of these orchids a separate adventure? Is it all the same situation? Is it the same adversary? How many of these orchids would I play in a session? My reasoning, like what seems reasonable, is that they're going to be intermixed because each time you flip and get a suit, that is either directly or indirectly applies to that orchid. All right. And it doesn't mean that the lightning strikes you and suddenly you're thinking of that orchid, or like the scene that is concocted is not necessarily having to do with your quest to find that orchid, but it's generated thematically from that orchid. And the reason I say that is because each of the different suits has a different meta game going for it. So the orchid represented by diamonds is going to have this theme of a treasure to die for. And for clubs, it's a shocking truth. And for spades, it's a monstrous curse. And in hearts, it's an uncanny wonder. And so even if it, because early in the game, it's not going to make a lot of sense for like, let's go on this path because this card got flipped. No, let's go on this path. And oh, this one is the clubs. That means the shocking truth orchid is singing to us. No, it just means you're deriving from that sort of assembly line of ideas. And you got to kind of think of it in a meta theme. And I think it'll make a little bit more sense when I show you how it works. But each of the pulls, each of the turns that generates this obstacle, the suit and the position is going to tell you what kind of problem it is, what orchid pipeline it's going to be working under. And then the GM is going to look at this, these obstacle seeds and generate an obstacle appropriate to that. And there's a pacing mechanism that I think once you sort of put it together of what it looks like, it's quite clever. And that is that for every 6 obstacle cards, you want one of them to be, or you want 3 of them to be risks, which is like a dangerous situation that can harm you. You want 2 of them to be reveries, which is like stirs a memory from the past, and the solution, because it's gonna be called an obstacle, but it's like a scene. The solution to that obstacle is that hunter, whoever turned that, you have to reflect on your past, reveal something about themselves. And this like gives the character depth and also provides, from a GM perspective, some pacing relief. In solo play, I think I would expand that. It doesn't have to be a memory every time. It could be a bodily sensation. It could be some sort of understanding or catharsis, or it could be just some sort of decision they make. I don't like this person in my group, and they just kind of decide it right away. But whatever that is, they're going to resolve that by working through that. And they're not necessarily going to have to take action. They're not going to have to use a belonging to be like, oh, I keep thinking of my mother. Well, I'm going to use my machete, and I'm going to use the handle of it to hit myself in the back of the head, so I stop thinking about mother. And then 3 risks, 2 reveries, and 1 reward. And this one is going to lead to a clue about that orchid, whatever suit it is. And they'll be sort of general at first, and then it will get more specific as you get closer. The player themselves is going to describe, based on this prompt, like what the clue looks like, and the GM is at that point going to say 4 cards remain until the next ace. And so based on the amount of clues they have and how close they feel they are, they're going to be like, should we keep going here? Should we try something else? Like, because once you hit that ace, it's going to switch gears a little bit, and each orchid, think of that as like a showdown scene. You have to have 3 successes for that, and whatever adversary has been a part of that is going to show their face. Now, it's not like you're on an island looking for these 4 orchids, and each of these 4 orchids have an like a mustache twiddling adversary that, like, I'm the one who is protecting the Psychopsis orchid. Like, it's not going to work like that, because the obstacles and the barriers, and even the adversary that's assigned to each suit or each orchid, it's not always like a Scooby-Doo person. It could be, but it can also be a rival orchid hunting party. It can be the local villagers who feel like they're tired of people coming into their lands and doing this. It could be a wizard who's changing the weather to stop you. It could be an army from another country that's like, oh, you can't come on this place looking for this because this is an occupied military settlement. Whatever it is, I just don't. It would be a huge like immersion breaking moment if every single orchid had its own Waluigi, right? And so yeah, we're gonna overcome these obstacles. For most non-orchid obstacles, you need at least 1 success to get past it. and we talked about how those successes can come from either the hired hand, the belonging, uh, testing of wits. And if you roll a fail and a test of wits, you have a choice. Remember I said you have to give up a hired hand and a belonging? Well, you only do that if you want to succeed. If you're out of luck, like you not only lose whatever you have, like your belonging or your hired hand, you also fail whatever you were trying to do. And you get to narrate your end if you run out of luck. And then right as that person falls to their death, another one's like, "Hey, how's it going? I'm his twin brother." So when the ace is flipped, you found the orchids. It's not a free win. Like I said, it triggers like an orchids obstacle. It's harder than a normal obstacle, and you have to get a 3 successful actions to secure the blooms. The GM is gonna, if they're, I will say this is a little bit tough. Like I kept thinking about running through this as a GM. The GM is gonna tie this moment to all of the hidden threads that are going on in this story right now. The orchids associated adversaries going to appear and assert themselves itself, and the group's going to uncover a secret that's been building around this thing. And then if you get it, you get to name the orchid and add it to your haul. It's a tall order to ask a GM to create one mystery. It's very hard to do that without it seeming contrived, with it working. And no matter what level of system you create, and believe me, this is an elaborate but beautifully spelled out system. This is like the GM worksheet that leads you closer and closer to the orchid finding. Even so, it just doesn't, there's no formula for it. There's no formula for it because there's not you're playing a game. And so ultimately a person can take investigative risks that they wouldn't take normally because they're not actually putting like their experience of pain on the line or their lost time or their frustration. And so you have to find other ways to manufacture pressure. You have to create other ways of punishing the player for overusing different skills or taking too much time. And the reality is that very few games are able to do this well. And if they are able to do it well, they're like all-time games. They're like Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu. You know, they're games that are beloved. And so it's tough. It's tough. And so I think if I was a GM for this, I would try to create a good story. I think that this secret thing of like there has to be this secret that's associated with it. I don't think that that's as important, or at least in the way that it's presented. It's presented as a shocking secret. I think it's a lot less pressure on the GM if you were to say it's something the players don't know, something like a little bit of a twist, some information that they didn't have, and I think that will be easier to achieve. But the fact that you're supposed to come up with 4 of these, that's tough. That's really tough. But yeah, play is going to continue until the hunters decide to return to London. All the orchids are collected, or everyone's dead. And at the end, the hunters are supposed to sort of narrate how they're going to keep other hunters from finding their source, and each hunter has to roll to see how many orchids survive the journey home. And then each player says, "Well, I'm going to stay out in the wild. I'm consumed by delirium." You know, when you say that, I'm so delirious, I'm making a decision. I think that is fun, but I wish there was a little bit more of a concrete scoring. In fact, let me make sure there's not. Well, you know what? Forget it. I don't want that. I don't want that. Because what I want is Volume 2 and Volume 3 to have some sort of continuity. I want in London my orchids to to translate into salary, and I want to get new belongings. And I'm going to tell you all about some things that I've already done from a solo side of things that I think are just very usable in terms of making this a game that can go on. Because by the end of the game, it's not like a board game, right? I was playing this role player earlier today, which I simply don't understand how I enjoyed this so much. You just create a character. But got this from Noble Knight Games, very nice price. I'll put the link below. Sponsor the channel, Noble Knight. That there is, I think, like some satisfaction at the end of that to total up your points. But we're moving from like the qualitative to the quantitative here. And that would be overall sort of my only, not really a gripe, but miscalibration between what I look for in a game and this is when you create too many diagrams, um, you just have to remember that nobody wants to see that. Even when it's this beautiful, um, like there's a Patton Oswalt joke about I can't really say the punchline, but he's like I don't. He was talking about Phantom Menace, and he was saying how stupid it was to see Anakin Skywalker's little kid because he's like, I want to see the stuff I like. I don't want to see where the stuff I like came from. Like, I want to see Angelina Jolie. I don't want to see John Voight's where Angelina Jolie came from. That's her father. And so it's like this should be under the hood, and the purr of the engine and the speed and the finish and the acceleration are what people are actually going to enjoy unless they're geeks, which I mean enough people are. I mean, in this hobby that's a good bet, but I think mostly um the 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 board game setup, you're so immersed in numbers and matching and dice rolls and all of these things that when you're ready to generate a score at the end, it only feels right that you do. But in tabletop play, you're switching so often between subjective and objective. You're switching between that which can be definitively ruled upon to something that is in the theater of the mind. And so putting a score on that always seems kind of funny. Like Pendragon does it really well, but you don't you just tell the characters, the players, you want glory. Glory is great. Oh, what do you do with it? Oh, it's great. The more glory you have, the better. But ultimately, it's just like this belief in it. You know, it's sort of like currency or something. Um, but there's a lot that has to go into it for that to be meaningful. It's sort of like combining figure skating with golf, right? Like one of those things is very objective. There's no way like when the putt happens, it's not like there's judges there who are like, I'm going to give that a hole in 2. I'm going to give it a hole in 1. Oh, I give it a hole in 2.2, right? It's like it either is or it isn't, whereas figure skating is judged on these other criteria. Anyways, carrying on, let's talk about what I think we could do with solo play here. When we want to solo play a game that's not explicitly made for solo play, at the very beginning, before we consider everything else, we have to have a belief that the role that a GM plays in the game, played rules as written with a group, we believe that that role can be not perfectly reproduced, but can be accounted for, accommodated, partially provided, obliquely provided with stipulations. Like we say, how can we, as a solo player, how can I functionally create a dynamic that feels like I have a GM. And when we think about that, whether we use these words or anything like them, we consider several different things as we consider what a GM does. And like, let's go to the very basement level of meaning. Okay. Don't even say things like, oh, well, the GM decides, if there's what stat your player uses. That's too that's too specific. I know that was very general what I just said, but let's boil it down to like the actual logical functions, transactional functions that the GM does. There are two ways I think about this, and the first one I came up with is more broad, but it's three parts, and I think of it as map. Man alone is a player. No, I'm kidding. This is meaning, adjudication. I always do this. Adjudication and pressure. More specifically, like direction and meaning, opposition, pressure, and procedure and adjudication. Okay, so like um, adjudication would be like who decides what a prompt means in the fiction and what follows from it. Obviously, in group play, this is the GM. The GM is going to convert in Orchidelirium. The GM is going to convert an obstacle seed into a scene. So they're going to look at if they use this tool, they might just think of it off the top of the dome, but they go here and they see that the player has a 10, and it says that we already used that one. A gathering throng. And the GM has to take that input, which is very vague, and has to squish it through their mind grapes and convert it into a scene. And this scene has to have qualia. They have to say, they have to describe a scene picture, like a movie of the mind. They also have to know or suspect they know what it means, what it might mean for the players. They have to anticipate a little, like what the players will be prompted to do by that, how it will cause them to sort of look one way. Maybe something else is coming the other way, or maybe they're looking that way because they should be looking that way. They decide the framing for that in this game would be the risk, reverie, reward framing, how those notions are offered, the consequences, how the world reacts to the choices of the player, and then they decide when these revelations or resolutions count. Like, when do they count? What is the consequence? How severe is the consequence? How will they serve their time? Um, and how well did they pass or fail to pass whatever test it was? And if they didn't pass or they only passed a little, what are sort of the stipulations of their victory? So, like in solo play, you have to replace adjudication with a scene framing procedure, which here would be like how to interpret a seed, a consequence rule. What is the threshold for success and failure, and what are the consequences for, or what changes on a success or a failure? And I guess a revelation rule. When does an idea become true in the fiction? That is one that happens very often, but it's often beneath the threshold of notice. If you start saying something, if you're playing in a group of people and you say, I'm going to unsheath my sword, and the GM stops you and go, whoa, 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 you're underwater right now. And you go, oh, I didn't realize that. It's like, yeah. Nobody is able to, you're swimming. Okay. It's a redirection. It's missed information about the scene. and maybe I don't know why you can't use your sword underwater, but let's say if somebody has something they would shoot and then say, no, you can't do that. You're underwater. That sort of redirection is, if we want to be real literal nerds about it, the player press play on their mind tape. They press forward on their Xbox controller of their mind, and then the GM paused and rewound it. In solo play, that's only going to happen if you do that. Now, you're probably more likely to do that because you're not going to be like, oh, okay, I'm underwater. Well, I'm going to take out my 6-shooter and be like, hey, self, you're underwater. Like, you were the one that just decided that. But there's also this decision about what sticks. So, for instance, um, you roll your beginning stats for solo play, and you get like a 2, a 2, a 1, a 2, and a 1. I would probably say I'm going to re-roll that entire bucket. I will. It'll be a waste of time for me to even start a game here, and I'm talking about a game where the stats are 15 to 18. I'll just be like, there's no point in me doing that. I would not be able to do that at all, or I might make that person into a companion or something like that. So we decide what counts. Um, and that is actually something that for some people plays no level of role in solo play, but for other people, it's like constantly on their back is, did I make that count enough? Did I cheat? Did I create a situation that was easy for myself? Um, these are considerations that people make, and so that's a very subtle one, but it does happen. Um, Now, that's adjudication. If we look at pressure or opposition pressure, we're asking the question of like, what pushes back against the will of the player? What causes and then escalates trouble? What creates risk? What delivers the outcomes, consequences of that? And in group play, this is partly mechanical, right? The dice are going to decide when in here is a wits roll or test of wits or losing belongings. But largely the GM is going to referee how hard a situation is, when to bring adversaries on screen, when to escalate to keep tension from flattening, when to flatten to stop players from feeling like they are Arnold Schwarzenegger's character in Running Man, just like one thing after another. In solo play, pressure has to be procedural. It has to be paced, and it can be done by the player, but you run back into the revelation problem then. When is something true? For instance, here, I talked about this system of risk, reverie, and reward. And this thing that seems pretty pointless on the bottom here is like, okay, for every 6 obstacle cards you draw, 3 of them should be risk, 2 of them reverie, 1 reward. And you say, I don't need this game to tell me what obstacle should be what. Well, try doing it on your own. When do you give yourself a reward? It's going to go one of two ways. Either you're never going to give yourself a reward because you're like, well, I don't want to just be giving myself prizes. It's sort of like when you ask someone to write you a reference letter and they go, yeah, you go ahead, write it, I'll sign it. You're like, oh man, I don't want to talk. Like, it's going to suck because I can't talk about myself that way. Um, you're gonna never give it. You're gonna give it all the time. Or you're going to be balanced about it, and it's probably going to shake out this way anyways. So why not just check off the boxes? You'll very often be procedural. We will sort of put a governor. Is governor what Arnold Schwarzenegger? Why do I keep talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger? Um, it could be procedural, like checking off a list. It could be resource driven. I mean, that's what with the pennies. or the belongings. You can do it this many times until you run out of that resource. And then we have a lot of things that escalate. A great example of escalation is Blades in the Dark with the clocks, which have been ported over to many games. It's like this idea of you don't know when this thing's coming, but there is something tracking it and deciding it. It's like what I think a lot of games try to do in the Cairn into the Odd type bloodline, but it's actually the best, I think the best, cleanest implementation, simplest in Alone in Deepfall Breach for Dragonbane. Where it's just like you have this threat die that increases and something's coming. It's not spoiling anything because you don't know exactly what it is, maybe. You don't know when it's coming, but it's coming. You can see that this die is advancing. We're getting closer to it. And that way, I don't have to worry about the escalation. The escalation comes early. It's like, okay, yeah, sometimes that happens. You know? Sometimes you're listening to your favorite Peter Gabriel album, and then your mom's like, you gotta go to school. And you're like, I'm not done listening to my favorite Peter Gabriel album, but it's time. So in Orchidelirium, this would be like the pressure from belongings as HP and the risk modes and then uh possibly some rules that we could do for more consistent escalation. Basically, you don't want to have a situation where you're always having success or where you say I can always buy success or I can always make it easy for yourself. Because that's always true. That's always true. I think we need to realize that right now I could solo play Orchid Delirium really quick. Ready? I won. I just played the whole game and I won. It's absurd, right? But I can do that. It's just for me. Part of actually what if you are a person that connects to this, if you're a person that found this video accidentally, this is a specifically solo video. I feel that attracts these sort of comments that are something like, why are you doing this? Like, what is the point of all this? And honestly, I used to think that it was like we just need to figure out the right combination of moves here so that we can solo play this game. I think this is half the game now, is trying to figure out how I can convert this game. And then once I get it, it it doesn't just feel like I'm driving a convertible, and it's zooming out uh as I'm driving around a a hill in California. It's like I'm driving with my top down, but I also built the car, you know. And then I don't know why I went in this order, but meaning or direction and meaning. This is who decides what matters, what it's about. How do these disparate events connect to each other? What is the purpose of this quest? Like both like what the players and what the characters think is the purpose versus what is the actual purpose. What will the weight of this be? Right? Uh the was it George Eliot or Elizabeth Barrett Browning, or was that the same person? Oh man, if that's the same person, I'm gonna be very embarrassed. Man, now I'm so confused. No, Marianne Evans was the name of George Eliot, but it was like a poem that was like, "Come away with me tonight, and we will find the cost of all things or the weight of all things." But I can't find it. Anyways, this is what meaning is. It's like endowing the whole situation with meaning. Now, it could be said that in group play, that's collaboratively done, but ultimately that is very much um, part of the stamp that represents the effort of the GM. It is the function that they do to say this is means something. This is why. Now these are pretty broad. And a lot of this could come down to bookkeeping, deciding, spinning the wheel of fortune in the mind. For meaning, this is tracking threads, constraints, closure, right? Like when in this game, there has to be a decision of like, what is the secret? How do I reveal it? When's the right time? If we want to go a level up here and say, okay, brass tacks, like what does this mean? Let me think of a really dumb acronym for this. All right. It's 36 minutes later, but it was worth it because let's break it out a little bit more. And at the end, I'll tell you the acronym here. So first, we have, we want to set up the scene or scene generation. And we want to, the GM is going to set the tempo. They're going to decide the stakes or the intensity. They have to give opposition, right? So you could say they have to decide. I'll go to Greek mythology, like the nemesis. They have to say when to reveal knowledge, of course. And what do you get for all this, right? What are the rewards? And so just remember Stinker. This is the Stinker system. You just remember you need to be a real stinker to soloify a game. I also want to say that I came up with some alternates, grommets, generate a scene, rhythm. This is where it got bad. Ouch level was O, monsters, info drip, and treats. And then the last one was S. S stood for S. The one that works best is honestly Smadoyer, but that's not a word. But anyways, if we want to break these out just a little bit here, probably don't by this point, but scene generation, setting up, what happens next. In a group, the players choose which obstacle to flip. The GM interprets the seed. What are we going to do in solo? We're going to keep the player has to choose. Mode and pacing control, tempo, how tense or reflective is the scene? Well, we're going to have to go by that quota, the 3, 2, 1 for risk, reverie, or reward. Intensity, how difficult is it? The GM is going to tune that danger level, is going to frame in narrative bodily risk. In solo, we're going to have to figure out some default stakes or a consequence table, or at least like a measurement of that intensity. Nemesis, opposition in a group. The GM is going to time that adversary, reveal it, determine how difficult it is, escalate it. And we're going to have to come up with some escalation rules and some better ways to pace out the beats. Knowledge, information control. This will be the one where, and this is the best for me. This is the best way to do anything that requires the revelation of a secret. In solo play, I see it as the emergent truth protocol, or the protocol of emergent truth, your stinker pet. And this means that the secret is being built as we go through. And then when we reveal it, it's because we finally have enough information to like know to figure out what something is. It makes sense. And then rewards, the GM's going to say, here's the amount of cards until the next ace, and give hints to keep up momentum. And for solo play, we're going to have to just do some bounded distance limits, maybe clocks or focus rules to keep it from stalling. And I think we have some easy ways to do this, and I think this would be a good close to the video to just talk about how I did some of these things in this game to show you how it is an enjoyable solo experience. So let me clean up here so we have an easier workspace to work from. Don't forget Stinker. All right, so what's the big idea here for solo play? Well, in solo play, the deck is going to be the GM. And I think in group play, the deck is helping out the GM already a lot. So let's just push it a little bit. We have these 6 obstacles that are going to be generating lots of ideas for us, inputs that we're going to be quite familiar. It's going to tell us what kind of scene happens in terms of its position. And then the value and suit of the card is going to tell me how to color that scene and which of the 4 hidden threads it points toward, right? We have these threads that go up to each of the card suits, the secrets, a treasure to die for, a monstrous curse, a shocking truth, an uncanny wonder, which is perhaps even a little bit more uh, structured than other solo play we might have, right? Because we might say, well, how do I know there's a monstrous curse? Well, in this game, it's saying one of the things we're going to find out is going to be this monstrous curse, which of course we can interpret tangentially. It doesn't have to be like a curse necessarily. Um, I'm using the Jorma former accountant that started with a machete, a revolver, uh, this was a matches and tinder. This was a first aid kit. And the 6th one I forgot was a purse with like mixed coins in it. Then, because uh, it would be 10 belongings for if there's just one player in the GM, it instructs that player to use 10 belongings. I think that's too much to manage on my own, like thinking about all of those. So instead, which I think this not only works better from balancing, but also is kind of fun. This right here is my HP. 5 cards face down. So I have 10 HP. And if I lose HP, like if I lose a belonging, for the first 5 times I lose, I can choose to like lose something from here. And I don't know what these are yet. These were random cards, and so I might be losing something really good, or I could be saving something really good that's here, or I could be adding something that sucks. Like some of the belongings are really not that helpful, you know, like a bell that I ring or something. Um, and similarly, I can also, if I lose any of these belongings, I might be able to find new ones during the adventure, and I can draw them from here. So I could have up to 10. It does the job of keeping me alive longer. I don't have to manage all of them. And it also feels a bit ridiculous to have 10 things, you know, if I got 6 guns and 2. So this works better for me. As far as hired hands, I think that having all 6 of them is already pretty good in terms of like, because usually we'd be dividing this up through amongst a bunch of players. So the only difference here is that I'm controlling all of them. The sun is right in my eyes. So we do have 6 pennies. The one adjustment I'm going to make to the hired hands, though, is rather than picking them now, I pick 3 of them now. And then after I get the adventure from my employer, I guess the hunt, I can learn a little bit more about where we're going, and then I can pick the other 3 so that I can sort of tailor those hired hands to what kind of uh, environment or situation we're going to. So I'm going to say right off the bat, I'll take a botanist. I am going to take uh, a soldier. I'm not going to take a surgeon right away because I do have the first aid kit. I'm going to look up the difference between a porter and a valet. My gosh, having either a porter or a valet is going to feel like I am an insufferable person. So technically, I mean, a porter brings your luggage up to your room at a hotel, and a valet gets your car. But that's like modern usage. Both of them are going to be personal attendants, but usually a porter carries stuff for you, and a valet handles like personal requests. I don't, I don't know. We, uh, I nah, I don't. What about a collector? What is that gonna do? Go collect taxes? Let's do a cook. I'll do a porter. Carries something for me. I guess I'm rich. Okay, so we have a porter. Um, and let's see here. So our job really here is not to plot an adventure. Like this would be perhaps helpful as we go along, but I don't think we should fill this out before we start. All we have to worry about is framing the scene, making the choice of what we're going to use, and recording a concrete hint tied to the suit. Now, what I think is going to make this better is that technically each suit has these secret labels, right? So one of them is this treasure to die for, a monstrous curse, a shocking truth, an uncanny wonder. Just so that our clues are aligned, I think that I want to give each of those a theme that is still very broad, but is a little bit more narrow. Okay. And I think that a good place to get that is we'll call that like adding a one word palette to the suit. A good place to get that is the other Aether Corp thing here. There's some wonderful ideas in here, terrifying traits, uh, devilish deals, etc. But actually, if any of you have Bell Whispers, this is really, really good. This is by Tower House Creative, who does the Oracle die, among others. And this has really fun D100 tables. Now, I probably wouldn't look at this for a theme because it's very, very specific. Like a long maroon clay pipe is not much of a theme. But I will look through this to see like if I can pull uh, uh types or exemplars of that theme. Gosh, this is really good. These are such like sound levels, light levels, dungeon theme, D20 season, narrative inspiration. Oh, see, this is cool. This is actually something we might want to try. Why is this adventure being undertaken? We might have to adjust a little, but I actually think, because what I was thinking was like artifacts, greed, rot, dread, rivalry, paranoia, wildlife. But actually, maybe we'll use this narrative inspiration when we get our first employer obstacle. But that's going to allow me to stay on theme as I reveal the hints. Because remember, I'm revealing these hints, but I don't know what the secret is yet. So I could say, well, as long as I'm revealing the hints for a monstrous curse, but I need like a little bit more than that. I need to be building towards something so that I can at least color inside the lines, even though I don't know the picture I'm coloring yet. All right, so um, let's deal our first 6 cards in the circle here. And of course, the employer one's going to go first, and then the environs, locals, messages, travel, weather. Okay. And I have the aces in the right positions, meaning that one of them is 2 of them are at the front, 2 of them are near the back. Okay. And so let's see here. Our employer Three of clubs. So right away we know that this three of clubs is related to the shocking truth because it's a club. However, the first card can be a little bit different because it's such a broad open. So let's see what it says here. Hasten your departure. Okay. So we want to hasten our departure, and that could be because of the shocking truth later. We see that as like, you need to go now. It's like, why? You need to leave now. Okay, right? And so maybe later we'll find out why that is. We'll keep that in our back pocket. But I do like this D20 table here, this narrative inspiration. Let's see if I can find something. Um, let's use, of course. Oh, good. My notifications turned on. But of course, we could use our Dice Nest Starry Sky Liquid core die here. So we're going to use the D20 table in Bell Whispers to see what the nature of this is. And we have a 13. Auspicious. Remove a curse. Okay. So this employer, which is J. Carmichael, is the standard employer, says, you have to leave now. You have to leave. And I said, well, I thought we were supposed to head out next week. I haven't even assembled everybody. We have to leave today. I'm running out of time. This thing that's been happening to me, it's getting worse, and you need to go now. And also, no one can wear green. Nobody can wear green. What? Wait, we're going. Aren't we going someplace that's green? No, you're going to be going to. Let's find a terrain other than a jungle where an orchid would be. Now, this might be difficult. Well, I was about to look for a table, but then I was looking through the advanced double D6 and in the inspiration cloud, and the first two things that caught my eye here were venomous and subterranean. And so maybe it says you're only going to be in a jungle for a little while, because as soon as you take the plane, and then you take the prop plane, and then you take the boat, and then you take that thing that's sort of half a boat and half a car, a hovercraft? Yeah, a hovercraft. You're gonna get off. You'll go through the jungle a little bit. Bring some of your people. Bring some of your people because there's going to be animals there. I don't know. I can't think about it because right now, oh, my nails look brittle. Look at how brittle my nail. You have to go now, and once you get there, they're going to lead you to a cave because uh, this this grows in very very low light, and I need you to get me an orchid that grows in the dark. I'm like, uh, okay. I don't know if that's possible. I can actually see what the lowest light orchid is. See, I told you orchids are incredible. Check this out. This is the Gastrodia pubillabiata. Don't think about that second part. The Gastrodias are potato orchids, and they have almost lost the ability to photosynthesize, and they adapted by drawing most of their photosynthetic processes from fungus. And so plausibly, these could probably be like a cave mouth, but we could probably say that this is, I don't know if this will be the orchid we find, but there is some sort of special order for an orchid that grows in the dark. Now, that right there is a bit more than we needed from that, because really all we know is this hastens our departure, and as far as why that is, what the obstacle was, we could probably consider that like reverie. I know that it's not it might be, actually it might be a reward. It might be a reward, but again, the first card doesn't matter that much. So let's move on to the next one so we can get more in the idea of things. So this is a 9 of diamantes, and for this, what is this? Environs. Um, monolithic impediment. All right. So this one I think could be a risk. Basically, um, perhaps we are traveling through. We're on the Cessna has landed. Then we're on a boat, and the boat is going down this narrow river, which I believe the Gastrodia is almost everywhere. But I think it said it was in. Cool. So this is around like Japan and Taiwan. And it grows very often in bamboo forests. Now, this is the part that gets like a little bit for me. Uh, it's like again, there's not a forest where there's all of these different orchids, so we kind of got to be a little bit loose and maybe right now, even though we have a diamond, and the diamond means that it's related to the thread of a treasure to die for. Um, it might not necessarily be because this orchid is nearby. This is just kind of giving us information about that story thread. Okay. You kind of got to think of it as like the orchid and the story thread are paced together, but they're not necessarily like thematically related. It doesn't have to be that at the end the treasure to die for is this orchid, or that the everything that happens with that is going to be interlaced with this story. But let's look at the obstacle first. So we have this monolithic impediment. We're on the river, and essentially there is some sort of bridge that's been erected. And we look over to the side, and there's just like a guy who's standing there, and there's no one walking across this bridge. And we don't want to destroy the bridge. We bring the boat to a stop. We say, "Excuse us, sir. We need to get by here." He says, "Ah, yeah, sorry. Can't. Oh, I was supposed to think of my other hired hands. So we'll say an interpreter and a climber. That sounds because it'll be in a cave. And I wish there was something like a mariner. No. We'll do a carpenter. Maybe that could help with like building some sort of apparatus. So we have a botanist, a carpenter, a climber, an interpreter, a porter, a soldier. Okay. And so he says, I'm so sorry. My bridge is here. And we said, well, we can see that it's quite low, and we can't get our boat through. It's like, well, there's not a lot of boats that come this way. I only see a boat maybe once a week. And we said, so we're the only boat you've seen this week? He goes, yeah, but it's a Monday. Um, when was the last boat you saw? Yesterday. Okay. Anyways, how do we get through? Well, as you can see, you can't. I have this bridge. It's steel, the steel wire here, and people use it to get across. I don't see anyone walking across this bridge. I get about one person a week. How are boats supposed to get through? He says, how are boats supposed to get through anywhere? Okay, there's no passage here. You ask me how the boat's supposed to get through, as if I'm supposed to concede the premise that boats should be allowed to pass this way. Does anybody ever go to Scotland and ask, how do you get a boat through Edinburgh? No, because you don't bring a boat through there. And this is my bridge. Boats don't go through it. So find another way. There's another arm of the river back that way. And we say, well, where? He's like, Kyoto. That's 3 days. Not my problem. So we would look at all our different stuff. And I guess I could use my revolver. But we clearly don't want to do that. We probably would want to use some sort of um, negotiation. We'd want to use uh, the carpenter, perhaps. And I think that's probably what I will do. and I say, okay, listen, um, we're our carpenter is going to build a quick ramp to get our boat up, and then we're going to portage our boat to the side, everybody, and we're going to create some sort of simple machine to get it up on our shoulders. Um, if I wasn't so far in this video, probably could have thought of something a little more elaborate, but so on and so forth. And so on the tracking sheet, then uh, we would be able to, for, is it on the back? Where did I put that? We would basically say that we took a risk. And now we're kind of seeing why there are these 10 things. Because really, with these 10 things and these 6, I have 16 free passes. And I'm going to have to figure out where to use my, like, where I'm going to test my wits. Because the test of wits is going to have to happen multiple times. I don't want to do it all up front because I'll waste all of these cards, right? But say I were to test the wits, I'm going to test the wits, is a 2d6. And in my solo mode here, we have a 6 or a 7 covers it. But suppose it's an embellishment. So let's look at the next one here. 3 of diamonds. And you probably would want to write these down, right? So that especially if you have like a running theme through them. This one is again the treasure to die for. We would probably get some sort of clue from some sort of generator. In fact, I think this is what is this, fantasy? No, that's sci-fi. That won't work. I think there's like an here. Yeah, this is Age of Sailing. Um, Drying paint. So perhaps um, there is some sort of like very, very famous lost painting that might be related to this one, but we don't know yet. We don't have enough of those clues, and so I would write it down. For this one, I would write monolithic impediment, and just to like keep track of the clues that we get. And of course, you can like, what's cool about this is you can backtrack it if you don't write them down. You can just compare the cards. But I would say like how I resolved it as a bridge or whatever. This one is an underground grotto. That's perfect, right? And so I don't know. There's an underground grotto. The path down is you have to sort of slide and get under this place um, to get through because it caved in. I mean, this is very much a sort of trope, but say I try to test my wits and I say, well, you know what? Actually, I always wear suspenders. And because I have these suspenders on, I'm able to steer better while I'm sliding on my ass down like a ramp. And I'll make it right in this cave. And so that makes my success window now 6, 7, or 8. I got a 10, so I died. No, I failed. And so now what I can do is I can give up a belonging, and we'll say that this is my suspenders, right? Because I don't know what it was. Out of curiosity, it's a 4 of diamonds. I would discard that. And the 4 of diamonds would have been a musical instrument. So, I mean, could have been fun. But yeah, and so I'm very much looking forward. If anything comes out of this video, it's that I really want to encourage uh, Luke Earl to continue on to volumes 2 and 3, because I do feel like there's some stuff we could add for a more persistent campaign. I like and I'm almost surprised I haven't played more of this. So if you know a good one of exploration, there's a lot of solo games that are sort of open ended. Um, I One of the first games I tried to make was called the Museum of Human Consciousness, which was this thing that I worked on in Alfred Valley. It was really nice to look over it, and I just sort of looked at it after a while, and I said, had a very interesting system and stuff, but I said it's just so open-ended. And the story was that you sort of like travel around and you're the only human left and you're trying to catalog stuff. And I would notice like these other games would pop up that had this same conceit. And every time I'd see it, I'd go, did I say I said, I think I said something about this on the channel. And I think that this person's ripping me off. And then I would see more and more and I realized there's no one ripping me off. I mean, this is ridiculous thought. It's that like that is a very uh sort of, I don't want to call it obvious, but it is an engine that lends itself well to solo play. It's open ended. You discover, oh, here's a can of soup. Here's the Mona Lisa. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool to like create those things and have it open ended and establish your own meaning. But I wonder about adventure games, just pure adventure games. And one that I'm considering and have started working through the assistant director. I'm curious if people have experiences. This outgunned adventure obviously would seem to lend itself well to that, but it still seems like it's mostly about making an adventure movie. I'm wondering, maybe I'm just not thinking of it as just like a pure adventure exploration type game where the real goal is like finding something. Is there something like that I'm just not thinking about? I mean, what's Rivers of London about? Never played that. We're out of time. I know that you pay by the minute here. I appreciate you, and please check out Aether Corp. I'll put some links below, and if you can, go on the itch.io page and say, "Hey, man, Volume 2 sounds good. I'll buy it," and then buy it. Okay, bye.